Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm gonna show you how to make industrial techno in the style of KRTM. So basically this track has been creating during my live stream session on my other audio react channel. I do that every Sunday. You can come along and see me creating music live, interact with me, ask me some questions. And today we're gonna talk more about the sound design and the composition of each track. And next week we will focus more on the arrangement, automation, mixing and mastering. Right, so first let's have a listen to the track. So the track is a little bit special and different than I will usually do. So for this one there is no like the classic DJ intro with like a beat and it's starting with an intro. There is also a lot of changement, so I'm gonna go a little bit over a different part of the track to get you a global idea. I'm gonna start with the intro. Got other moment where some more percussive. And then it got this change here as well. You have a break with kind of a pad and a vocal.
And then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And that keeps things moving. That's the nature of life.
It was a little bit longer playback than usual, but there is basically a lot of different elements and a lot of different parts inside the track. So let's get started. So the first track is the sidechain. It's basically a track, it is on send only, so you don't hear it basically. It's just a 909 clap playing every beat. I just use it as a trigger for all of my sidechain compression in the track. So that's what's gonna duck my compressor, for example, or if I have a compressor on the bass. And I have the Kickdrum, and I just use sample sound like this. So it's a kick from my Process Techno 2 sample pack. It's quite this heavy round kick with a pretty long tail, so you almost don't really need rumble or bassline. What I've done here, I like to use overdrive to kind of distort a very specific portion of your spectrum. You can see here is around there, around 3 kilohertz, and just a very slight dry wet amount because you don't want to lose too much of your low end. It's always adding a lot of character. See, add a bit of grit, kind of make you kick a little bit more brief. Here I have kick punch is pretty subtle. This is a parallel processing with some reverb with a very short decay. It's just to add a bit of reverb, just again to help the kick cut through the mix. It's very subtle on this one. This reverb is just for the break. It's a kind of to create a cinematic low hit. You're gonna hear it's activating. So it's creating this big cinematic boom, and then it's just a limiter which doesn't really work. Then I have kicked up. I'm gonna talk about the bass. So here for the bass I use actually the kick, and you can hear it's playing very fastly, so it's a quarter of the beat, so it's kind of this rattle effect. Obviously you can hear there is some sidechain applied and some EQ. So then when you sidechain, and then together with the kick, so let me play it just for the kick. Works well. And I like it like this, but I feel like it was missing a little bit of grit, and a great way to do that with kick, usually in my Industrial Techno sample pack, so you see here the Process Techno 2 here again, I always put this kind of loop that I call kick top. Basically, This basically what it is I take a kick loop, like it's basically a kick playing 4/4, and I add some distortion, delay, reverb, and you get this kind of gritty texture out of it. And it's something that I really like to put on top of the kick because it adds a lot. So you have your kick normal, and then when you play it with the kick top. So now it might sound a little bit too much, but in the context of a track, it adds really a lot. It adds this nice gritty texture on top, and that's pretty much it for our low end. Then let's jump into the hats. So you can see I have 3 different types of hats. I have what I've called hats metal, hats noise, hats grid, and I have as well noise right. So for this kind of track, hats are really important, and you really need to have different layers because they are very rich in hats. I mean, that's what I was looking after, and you cannot really achieve that with just like a closer hat and an open hat. And so different hats for different purpose. I have the hats noise, which is gonna be more like the bass, or more kind of the more basic style of hat. So this one, there is 2 playing. You have one closer hat and one which is playing like this driving pattern, going the velocity going up and down. So normal closer hat, driving one. In terms of processing for this one, I've used amp and EQ because I wanted very noisy hats. So amp is a great way to make your hats noisy. Just adjust boost frequency I felt like was good to boost. And then I have a closer hat. Again, I use pedal and overdrive to make it a little bit more noisy without effect. And with the pedal and overdrive. So that was the idea of this rack. And then I use this DR hats rack. It's a rack I created. Usually you have other pre-made track inside, and it's allowing me to easily sequence my hats. And I have as well some reverb on it. I have some macro sign. I'll put it in the description if you want to find out more about this rack. But here I'm sending both my hats to the very long reverb. And then I have a drum bus. So here I've been using this a lot lately. I like to use a drum bus on the hats with the compressor and the transient negatively because it kind of glue everything together with the compressor, and the transient is kind of reducing the tail of the reverb. So basically what I will do is I will use the reverb for my hats, which is quite long, we usually leave a long tail, a bit messy, a bit noisy. But when you use this transient negatively on the drum bus, it's kind of acting like a gate, and it kind of reduces this tail. So you get the effect of a very wide room, but you don't have the very annoying long tail, which is gonna mess your mix. So you get best of both worlds. You see how it's very rich here. And you're gonna see I'm gonna use this technique a lot in this template, and especially for this kind of techno where everything needs to be kind of in your face and loud. Drum bus is perfect for that. So that's our noisy, which is kind of basic. Then you have the one I call hats metal, which is obviously a bit more metallic. This one is a bit more driving and energetic. You can see that it's layer, how many are there? 5 different hats playing different type of pattern, but they are all always playing the same pattern all together. You can see that I don't have any pattern variation. There is no moment where you just have the closer hat and the open hats. So which means that usually what I will do, I will have one track which is closer hat, one track which is open hats, maybe a second open hats track, and 1 or 2 track with ride, and I will alternate and arrange like that along the track depending of the arrangement. Here I've done something different. I have a group of hats that I arrange like if it was closer hat, open hats. For example, this hat noise, you can consider it like my closer hat. My hats metal is like kind of my open hat, and then I have my hats grid, which is gonna be, let's say, a second open hat, and then after I have my ride. And so then I arrange my hat this way, but I keep all the hats inside a same group, all playing all the time together, even though it's a different pattern. And this is a great way to have a very rich open hat, because again, you cannot have something super rich with just using 1 hat or 2 hats. So I have the closer hat is playing this basic pattern. I have a second hat which is playing offbeat. I have open hats which one is a bit more percussive. It's kind of a closer hat still, but a bit more percussive. Here I have more kind of classic open hats, a bit more noisy. You can hear there is a bit of delay. This one again is playing this kind of driving pattern. You can see it's going up, down, this being offbeat, and then after you have the last one, which is kind of a ride, which is playing on the beat and offbeat. And in terms of process, for this one, I think there is nothing. You can see all the time, like my hats are not processed. Let me remove the send and return. You can see this one as well, no EQ. There, I use the sample as there were. Here is, again, it's very important, sample selection. You may have to make sure like the hats are fitting well together and like the whole things have a cohesion, because obviously, again, I use them as a whole group. So you have to make sure that all together they sounds good. Probably I send them into reverb, send A, yes, which is the reverb close here. So, and then after you have the open hats 2, which is going through, you can hear there is a bit of ping pong delay going on. And yeah, all together, you can see this one is a bit more driving and energetic. So that's great. And then the last one is hats grid, and you're gonna see this one. This one is a more textural hat, let's say. It's very noisy, very gritty. Here is mainly the process who does the job. I use the, this is Max for Live, it's included now in Live 11 straight away into your instrument library. Before you needed to go in a Max for Live section. Now if you go to instrument and drum synth, you have them already here. Classic close hat, classic kind of cymbals. The pattern, it's here again. I have the close hat, my hat which is going up, down. It's kind of driving effect. And my cymbal playing on the beat and off beat again. And here it's all about the process. So the point was to really make them dirty and stereo. So I have vinyl distortion. This is something I've been using again back lately. It's great to add stereo. It's great to have a little bit of dirt. So this adds usually a bit of stereo, this down, and this up add a bit more grit, depend on your drive as well. Erosion as well, great to add a bit of noise, dirtiness. I use the white noise, so like this is way much stereo. Then amps again, you know, you get this grit. It makes it a little bit clearer as well. More presence in the mid and in bass mode. And then overdrive again to... What I like with overdrive is you can filter your distortion, so this way you can be a bit more precise and kind of act halfway as an EQ. So again, it's way much more clearer, and so you know that it's not gonna mess, it's gonna fit better in your mix. And then EQ just to make sure. As I have a lot of elements with noise, and it's quite a rich mix. You see you have a 25 track. I tend to cut a little bit more the low mids than usual, especially on the high synth, because otherwise you get too messy after. But yeah, this is... You can see how I can use it as a hat texture sound. And then you have the noise, right? And to create that, basically I use wavetable, but you're gonna see it's the saturator who does all the job. I use the complex minus wavetable at FM. So the pattern playing is you have this one which is offbeat, and the two playing one offbeat and one between the offbeat and the on the beat. And you get this takada 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 effect. Doesn't really matter because when you process then here a bit reverb with a lot of dry wet, just to make it a bit more spacious. And the saturator with the wave shaper just smash everything into noise. So yeah, one thing you have during the live stream, I usually experiment a lot. So there is some stuff that I don't especially have like a reason why I use wave shaper. I just wanted experimenting, getting something nasty and dirty, and I use wave shaper, and I ended up with this parameter here having this result. And drum bass again, compress the sensor negatively for the same reason. And then sometimes I will have some drive and crunch as well if I want to add a bit more color. And then EQ what I don't need. And yeah, that's our bass. That's something really important to nail. And it took me quite some time. I done it actually on the first live stream, and on the second live stream, I went back and modified the drum, if I remember well, because I wasn't really happy with. It can sound easy, like, oh, I just pick up some good hat together, but you know, it takes time. Sometimes you need to come back and actually you didn't pick up the right sample. But now we have some percussion, so different percussion with different purpose. You have this one, which is kind of a noisy one, a texture percussive element as well. A little bit similar than this kind of sound as well. And you're gonna see it's quite a bit of process. So keep in mind I was experimenting. So I used the vintage BRDS dual saw, and I used the warp and the fold. One of the main things as well, I use the envelope 3 to modulate the pitch, but the thing is the envelope 3 is in loop mode, so which means it's gonna act kind of as a LFO. So that's without. And with is kind of giving this kind of laser gun style effect, zap, SFX. And you have as well modulation, the amplitude envelope, which is modulating the filter as well to get this more plucky effect. And then I have unison in phasing. Make it stereo. Alright, then this goes into saturation in hard curve mode. So I like the hard curve mode when I need something nasty because it's just crush everything. Then reverb, add a bit of space, add a bit of texture as well because of the tail. High EQ everything to just keep the clicky sound. Use drum bass to even like kind of crush everything. Redux. Redux is great to add a bit of digital noise and this dirtiness as well. And then I EQ what I don't need. And I SIDECHAIN, and I got it's just groovy, it works well. So in terms of pattern for the Perc one, it's a noisy stuff, so I don't know why I stuck that many notes. Again, I experiment a lot during the live stream, so I don't always have a reason that I've done this because of that. It's just probably I had this MIDI pattern playing and I just programmed the synth on top of it. Then we have Perc 2, which sound like this, which is kind of a tom sound. He's playing 16 closer hat pattern. See, just this one playing, don't worry about the other one. I just forgot to clean it up. It's to add kind of a tom feeling groove. Put it in mono, overdrive to emphasize this SIDECHAIN obviously, and after EQ. And this is quite a subtle one, but it adds a little bit something. This usually is the type of sound you don't hear them at the first listen, but then once you listen to tracks the 5th times or the 10th time, you are like, oh, I didn't notice there was this percussion here. And yeah, just add a bit more groove, add a bit of variation as well. Then we have the Perc 3, which this is more kind of a classic percussive element. Again, I've used wavetable. So now here you can see it, the volume is pretty low. So you might notice that I've used wavetable a lot, and saturator in hard curve, the reverb as well, and the drum bass a lot. The reason being that was always my go-to when I was creating the track. I was dropping, before even to start to modify anything, I was dropping wavetable, like my default, saturator in hard curve mode, a bit of reverb, and always this drum bass. Just again, like, because I knew I wanted something in the face and powerful. And then after I will usually try to find a sound. So sometimes I don't really have like a purpose. I'm just looking for element. So sometimes it's more percussive, sometimes more synth. And here I use the collection Copper. And again, I use the modern with and yeah, around 39%. Then I have a low pass filter, which is modulated by a filter. You can see that how it's opening fast. With an envelope with no sustain, short decay, this was what created this plucky effect and this percussive effect. And then I have a second one. Let me bring this one up. And you can see it's a high pass filter. And yeah, that's what gives character because I get rid of all of the low end. And yeah, just because after the hybrid reverb, I use the shimmer algorithm, nothing crazy, and yeah. So just playing right after the kick, so you get this tucken effect. Alright, and finally the last percussion, which is Perc 4. So here again a more rhythmical, noisy texture percussion. And this is a sample I played. This is something I like to do. I already done it in the past. I take a sample. So here I took a snare. I pitched it up to F semitone. Let me play the. This was the original sample. And what I like to do when it's in simpler like that, you can play kind of melody. Obviously, it's not really melody, but here I played 5 semitone upper, and then after I create a kind of pattern. So this is really depends. Usually, if you take this, I will probably have a pattern first like this. And then after I will take some of the note and pitch it them 5 semitone upper until I get a groove different than a bit usual. And then I have Perc loop. So that's a rack I've made. I put it in the description. It's mainly delay and reverb, and it's the delay and the reverb are set in the way that it basically take a simple percussive pattern dry and make it way much more rhythmical. So this way it's something a bit more driving. I add a little bit extra even more delay and some sidechain. And together. Without. So it's really important for me because if you listen on the whole track, you kind of always have this driving energy, and it was really important for me to have different kind of layer because you don't want to have always the same drum loop playing all over. So that's why I have always this very energetic has, very energetic and noisy percussive element as well to kind of alternate along the track and always create variation. So this way you always have this driving effect crazy, but it's never really the same, so it's not boring, and that's work for the track. All right, now let's jump into our main synth element. Here is the main lead, is where all started. That's what created the whole track. Basically it's very inspired by the track from KRTM called Super Soldier, and it sounds like this. And then I have some variation. Sometimes it plays just to time. Most of the time this synth is doing a question answer with the lead 2 that I'm gonna talk about in the right after. You can see here it's this one playing, and then after you have the lead 2 playing, then lead 1. So I do that often. I do that after even with synth 1 as well, where you can see it's lead 1 playing, then lead 2, then synth 1, then after it's lead 2 again, then it's synth 1 again, then lead 2. You get the idea. So the sound is a pretty aggressive FM kind of sound, pretty FM-ish wavefolding kind of sound. Again, that's the default sound. Again, you can see hard curve, saturator, the reverb, and the drum bass with compression, negative strength. So this way, I have my send patch loud. So I'm gonna activate it because that's actually how I create the sound. First, I put the effect, and then after I've been in Wavetable to tweak the sound. A bit of reverb. If you want some reverb preset, I put in the description where I explain reverb, hybrid reverb from Live 11. I have made a video about that where you can grab some of the presets I'm using here. I use the tide algorithm. You can see quite a big amount of dry wet and decay, and I cut the low of the reverb and the high as well. This avoid to be too noisy and too messy. So now I have my sound, which sound like in the warehouse or in the big space. So here there is few things that make the sound. First, I'm going to talk about the classic. Is here again, I have my filter weight down, but because it's modulating by the envelope strongly, you see 88, you open fast and you get this plucky effect. You see, I have it without the modulation, but it's still not as. Alright, now we have this. There is few things. First, there is this envelope 3, which is modulating the pitch. The envelope 3 is in loop mode here again, and what I like to do is bring down the sustain, bring down the release at 150, and then playing with the attack and the decay. So this way your envelope is acting kind of like a LFO, but this value, because you modulate the pitch, it's gonna act like the FM modulation, you see? And that's what's gonna create. So here is without pitch modulation. If I modify this, so that's something I like to play with the envelope 3 in loop mode to modulate the pitch. That's really cool. You can try other fold. I think I've done it with fold later on. We'll see, but yeah. And then after I apply, so this is basically how the basic shape. You see, it's like the triangle. I like to use basic shape because if you apply, usually most of the time, if you know you're gonna apply some like FM or modern effect, if you take a waveform which is already rich, it's gonna quickly turn into something very noisy and very hard to use. So either you have to be very gentle, either you have to take a waveform which is kind of pure, that doesn't have too much harmonics, and this way by using the warp and the fold you're gonna create the harmonics. So the pattern is D sharp and F sharp, but here it doesn't really kind of matter because of the FM nature of the sound, it's not gonna follow the pitch properly. Sometimes you have some really random result. So yeah, what's important is more like the pattern, how it play. But yeah, pretty simple pattern, but it worked well. I didn't want it something too melodic and too cheesy. So that's how I made the first leads, and then you have the lead 2, which sound like this. So the notes, it's D sharp, and then it's just going 1 semitone upper to E. And the sound itself, I use this format wavetable. Then I apply a bit of fold, a bit of warp. One thing then which does everything, I apply a bit of unison as well. So I use the noise one because I wanted this kind of reed bass, kind of super so sound, but very noisy, very dirty, and noise unison is perfect for that. If you want some dirty unison, that's the one you have to use. And then again, reverb. This is the same preset than before. Drum bass, and then you have as well Redux, and I put it in mono, and here we go. Pretty simple, but it does well in the track. And here it's playing a different pattern where it is basically just going up. With this little high note before to go down to just add a bit of variation. And yeah, this one didn't supposed to be the main element at first, but then I feel the main need was not enough by its own and I needed something to support him. So that's why I play this little question answer with both of Synth. And yeah, let's talk about the ARP. So that's something I've created, I think the first session or the second, but then kind of left it aside and didn't really wanted to use it. But then again, as for this track, I wanted to do something like a lot of small section inside the same track. I use it on the end to add a bit of variation, kind of surprising the listener because obviously I'm not playing it until after the main break. So it's playing G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and it's an arpeggiator playing in rate 8. Here again I use the basic shape, I use some FM. You can see the other weird things, you have some vibrato on the pitch. Then I have some very slow modulation of the FM amount. You see here, it's make the sound evolve because it's always the fourth I'm not playing over and over. You don't have that much movement. I don't really move that much the filter, so that was a great way to add variation. Then yeah, it's a plucky sound, so no sustain, and the release indicator around 600 milliseconds, and the amplitude modulating the filter. This is a classic sound design trick. And then I use, I was talking about movement, I use the flanger to add even more movement. You see, obviously there is this kind of filtered effect, phasing, changing. A bit of delay. And a reverb again. And the track. So you can hear, you got the impression the harp is coming in the front and back. You have this movement effect, and that's because of the flanger. The modulation on the FM amount as well does the trick, but it's mainly the flanger. And that's it for our harp. And then after, almost our final main synth is this weird one. So that's something I found a little bit by experimenting again during the live stream, and I keep it because it's one of the, in another track of KRTM, it's kind of, you have this kind of woo style of sound, and it's pretty easy actually to do. It's just you need to modulate your pitch with LFO. You see nothing happening. Then the sound is pretty basic. You have two sawtooths. One is detune semitone upper. So this is a classic trick I've shown already on the channel. If you want to make your synth sound weird and dramatic and uncomfortable, just detune an oscillator by one semitone, and from a beautiful synth you got something very weird and quirky. You can hear it's very stereo, you have some unison as well. And then after is the process, so you have a ring modulation, which make the sound even more weird, like you have a kind of a classic sawtooth and it's kind of sounding a bit too classic, and then when you apply a frequency shifter it's kind of sounding even more weird. But you still get this wobbling effect that I like it, and then amp make it a bit more dirty. Then I use cabinet. Cabinet I like because it can always put your sound into a weird space, and that's what I wanted. Again, it's a very weird sound, but bit of EQ. This is just some gain, and then a reverb which is gonna do And then you have these 3 tracks, which are the pad, vocal, TV noise. This appeared just during the break. Again, I wanted to go something different for this track, so I have like some brutal changement during the track, because you go from
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. Let's have a dream which isn't under control, where something is going to happen to me that I don't.
So you have the pad. I wanted to have a completely different ambience from the rest of the track. It's really like was to create a weird contrast. So obviously the pad is a bit more happy than the rest of the track. For the pad, so I've used this preset. So it's from my Wavetable Techno Bank 3. So according when you're watching the video, either it's been released or not. But I'm gonna show you how to make it anyway, how I made it. So actually, let me bring it here because there is some SFX during the break, so you're gonna hear the SFX is gonna. Okay, that's the. So you have this collection charcoal wavetable, which is kind of a sawtooth a little bit, which is you have the sub oscillator as well in the sine mode, which is gonna add some harmonics. And you have this filter as it's so wavetable with the warp at -100. And then you can see here is detune, which is gonna give you see again when I detune is getting things weird and detune normal. And you have LFOs which are modulating the oscillator to position. So this parameter with the LFO1, so you can see it's very slow rate, small amount with a triangle. So this is just to make things moving very slightly, to add movement, very slow movement, to don't have a very steady pad. And then again with the oscillator 1 per switch, so with this one here is modulating LFO2, again very slow rate, very slow amount. This time I choose the sine wave, but the idea is the same, making things move very slowly. And then you have just the filter which is modulating a little bit by the envelope too, but this is very like subtle. And then you have flanger. I think it's probably the same preset than before. Adding movement, you see this kind of filtering, phasing effect. A little bit more stronger effect of flanger flavor. Then Redux. Redux is not playing here, but then into a filter delay. And then it's going into a lot of reverb, long decay, great amount of dry wet. The EQ I like to boost sometimes just to make it kind of a bit more resonant. And the not playing, you have F sharp, and then you have the third, which is A, and then the fifth, and then the seventh, which is C sharp. And then it's still playing the same F sharp, but then I play another chord which is B, which is the fifth, and then I have D, and then I have again F sharp but an octave upper, and it creates this kind of very nice airing pad. Then I add the vocal, so I wanted to add a vocal. This might remind you a little bit the vocal in the cast track.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream.
And because if you listen to the original vocal without any process.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream.
And then I just EQ.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream.
To kind of accentuate this kind of old school recording. I call it radio effect, but you know, it's this kind of, yeah, you can see that it's been recording a long time ago because the quality is not a wow, but it was give all the character of the vocal actually, and it's what is really making it interesting. So I kind of emphasize this.
Let's suppose that you were able
just making a bit louder, then reverb.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream.
Then drum bass, same as before.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream.
Put it a bit more in your face with the same trick of the compression and the transcend negatively, which cut the tail of the reverb. And then just to cut.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream.
And yeah, and that fits perfectly on top
Let's
of the...
suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream.
And yeah, and then I heard this, what I've called TV noise. So this is a loop I found in one of my library. It's just like static noise that I filter. I wanted that because, you know, all the track, it's very noisy, gritty. I think you got the idea. And I wanted that as well for the breaks, so I used this kind of noise to add a bit more texture. Then there is some effect on the mixdown, which is the master FX, but I will come back to it next week in the arrangement part. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This play just for in the break. And then we have our ambience, which are kind of metallic ambience, this one. So you can see it's playing D sharp 1 over and over. And you can see it's like some weird metallic FM sound again. So I use the complex wavetable, add a bit of FM. Here you can see there is a modulation on the filter. First, you don't have movement, and then after you have the filter opening and this envelope doing that, you can see here it's kind of adding a delay to your envelope. You don't have any movement, and then after I open the filter. And that's pretty much it. And then after it's just like the processing. So that's come from experimenting. So long reverb. Again, saturator with wave shaper. A little bit less crazy than before, but and yes, I use it as a and then we have a second ambience, which is a weird one again. I'm just gonna show you how I made it. There is no really, again, it's coming from experimentation, so it's like I use this sound by default. Then amp, you need add a bit of grit, wave shaper, pedal, weird EQing to give really a tone, and then some sidechain. Again, here I go fast because I don't. There is no really nothing specially you can learn from it. It's just experimenting with some different type of distortion and EQing in a certain way. But yeah, and then you have this. I use it because at the intro I found it was missing a little bit something, and I wanted a different ambience, so I use. I use the amber. I apply some warp and fold. So you can hear there is some modulation on the oscillator 1 fold. Just the LFO making it move. High pass filter, just to keep the high frequency. And then you have this odd FX rack. So that's a rack I made and I shown on the channel. I will put it in the description if you wanna go and grab it and find out more. It's just like to create some weird effect, some weird sound. So it's the combination of different effects inside. You have spectral time, you have reverb, you have some frequency shifter, you have this pitch hack effect as well. It's a weird rack and it transforms a sound into something very weird. It's very experimental again. EQ. By the way, all the racks I shown, they're always available for free. I give them always for free. You just need to go to the related video and download it. And then you have this horn FX, which is playing here. Let me play in solo first. Which helps the transition of... And I use, again, the preset from my wavetable bank. It's kind of a classic sawtooth brassy sound, but a little bit revisited with some folding and with other stuff. Basically, you have your first oscillator. Classic kind of saw sound. Then add a bit of fold. Bring oscillator 2. Add a bit of fold. Bring the sub. And then add a bit of unison. And then once you got that, add a bit of reverb. And the drum brass gonna put everything in your face. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I have this noise SFX finally, which is this I already use it. It's one of the things I like to use on my own track as well. It's a what I like to call spray fix. It's just like kind of a blasting white noise in your face, and I like to use it just before the drop. It's basically just operator with some noise, and you see it's just one oscillator working, the oscillator A with some white noise, and you can hear I've applied some modulation on the filter, which is go down, and you have the LFO as well. So the more it goes, the more you have the LFO applied. And here's and obviously with hard curve mode to make it even more like in your face again. A bit of reverb. And you high pass, and you have this. And yeah, then I have the mix down. So these are like my master effect, but I will talk about this more in the arrangement because everything is related to the arrangement basically. And then I have my master with my master is chain, when I will come back to it as well next week. Alright, that's it for today's video. It was quite a long video. There is a lot of elements, but yeah, I hope you learned a few things. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can grab the template as well. It's a great way to support me if you like it. And see you next week for part 2 about arrangement, automation, mixing and mastering. Thank you for watching, guys. See you soon. Bye bye.